5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage P80, décollage.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It's docking from the poise module. Docking confirmed and capture confirmed.
Hello and thanks for joining us here on France 24 for France in Focus. This edition entirely dedicated to space exploration. That's because in a matter of days, the 10th ever French national will blast off into space. His name is Thomas Pesquet, and in this edition we'll be taking you to meet him. We'll also be showing you around this amazing museum here in Toulouse, where you can see things like this Soviet-era space station. But before we travel into space, we're going to travel back in time and take a look at the history of the French space program, which was launched in the early 1960s, back in the days of President Charles de Gaulle.
This is the very essence of French space industry. The Ariane rocket, a model of success and reliability. In 1965, France launched its first satellite, Asterix, atop a diamond rocket, a distant relative to today's Ariane. It would give France the number 3 position in the conquest of space for 50 years, behind the two great Cold War powers. However, France has had to adapt in recent years to stay competitive and get along with the neighbours.
All the major infrastructure is going into place within a European framework. Ariane is European. Participation with the International Space Station is European. The huge science programs like Rosetta, which have been in the news over the last 2 years, are European. Climate and environmental studies like Copernicus are European. But at the same time, we have this specificity where we're developing scientific tools that give us a seat at a very small political table and a chance at all kinds of international cooperation.
So France still excels. But despite that, it's had to face the fact that space is no longer just open to nation-states, but has become an industry with private enterprise muscling in on the action.
We've still got increasing numbers of players in the space industry with different origins. There are emerging countries on one side and online societies on the other. That's what's creating new space. It's another way of leaving the planet, to which we have to adapt. All of this has one objective: lowering costs and leading the competition.
Tech giants Google, Apple, Facebook and Amazon are all counting on this to get swarms of their own short-life satellites into orbit. The aim, providing worldwide internet access for pennies on the dollar. Either way, French industries have managed to maintain a good position in the rush towards new space, thanks to projects like Thales' Stratobus. And that's not all. France wants a hand in settling space too. The nation's expertise is already in play on the Moon Village project, a potential moon base that would be permanently inhabited.
Well, have you ever thought about giving up your day job and becoming an astronaut? Well, it's perhaps not as crazy an idea as it might sound. And I'm taking you now to meet someone who's done exactly that. His name is Thomas Pesquet, and he's going to be travelling in a tiny capsule just like this one, 9 meters cubed, at the speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. Well, he's going to be heading out to the International Space Station, and I'm going to ask him how he got the job and what he's going to be doing up there.
The most difficult thing I've done in the last few years is probably to learn the Russian language because we're going to have to use it almost on a daily basis. So using the Russian vehicle, so the procedures are in Russian, interaction with the control centers in Russian. So that was hard.
But can't be that hard. You already speak about 6 languages, don't you?
Yeah, but that was one of them, and it's certainly the hardest one, I think, by quite some margin. But we did some survival training so as to be ready not to survive on the planet, but to survive by ourselves with what we have on board the capsule in case landing is off nominal and we have to wait for the rescue party for a couple of days.
Packing for 6 months is never easy, especially if you're going into outer space. There's strict allowances, and what are you taking with you?
So for my daily life, food, clothing is all taken care of, so I don't really have to bother with that. For me, I can take a big shoebox of personal effects, so I'll take a few books, I'll take my judo black belt as a symbol, I'll take some presents, patches, pins for my relatives and my friends, so as to share this experience with as many people as I can.
Is there anything sort of a secret little item you're going to be hiding in your shoebox?
Not really. You could maybe sneak something this big in your spacesuit pocket just before you launch, but there's still a lot of rules and regulations that go into what is allowed in space and what is not allowed in space.
There's no alcohol allowed aboard the ISS. Any other strict rules you'd like to tell us about?
Well, guns, for once, and things like this, weapons of any kind. Alcohol is one. Even for the food, I mean, as a Frenchman, aged cheese on board the ISS would be a huge problem because of bacteria and smell. So fresh food is hard to come by on board the ISS, so that kind of thing.
So what are you actually going to be doing every single day for these 6 months you're going to be aboard the ISS? What will be your daily routine?
It's going to be mostly research, so being the operator for scientific experiments that have been created by scientists on the ground and sent to the ISS by the agencies, and then maintenance, logistics, things like this to keep the station running over the long run.
Peggy? Oh. Okay, Houston, I've lost comm with Peggy. If she doesn't respond, I think we have a problem here.
When you arrive in space, you're going to become the 10th Frenchman ever to venture into space. Was that something you always hoped would happen? Was this a sort of a dream that you nurtured throughout your childhood?
It was, but in a very naive way. I always say, I mean, I saw those people on TV and I think that was really cool. And obviously, I'd like to do that as well, but I couldn't even identify with them because it was so remote. You know, I grew up in a countryside in France, so I tried to get closer with every step I took in my studies, in my professional life, until I had the unbelievable opportunity to even apply for a selection. I mean, there's only one selection for astronauts every 15 years or so in Europe. So I think I was extremely lucky. I've dreamt about it when I was a kid, but I didn't really think there was something you could do in life to become an astronaut.
And in terms of your career path, you became an airline pilot. Is that quite a typical step on the road to eventually becoming an astronaut?
I'm the first airline pilot to become an astronaut in Europe, and it was more of a military thing before, so in that sense it's not that typical, but the more I look at it, the more common points I see, similarities between the two jobs, and I'm convinced that at least the flight in the Soyuz is very, very similar to what I was used to doing on my Airbus A320 in Air France.
What sort of advice have people given you, people who've come back from space? What sort of things have they told you to do, techniques perhaps to prepare yourself for that?
Well, there's a lot of feedback that you can only get from people who've been up there. So we talk a lot between ourselves, and I talk to my European colleagues, of course, among all the other ones, to ask them very practical questions. Sometimes it's as stupid as, okay, so what do you wish you had packed? How did your sense of taste change because it happens on orbit? Very, very practical details. How do you dry your towel? So it might sound a little bit, a little bit down to earth to any outside person listening into the conversation between two astronauts, because it looks like one is coming back from a camping trip and the other one is asking tips.
Okay, well, bon voyage. Thank you so much for speaking to us at Thomas Pesquet. We look forward to seeing you back here on planet Earth very soon indeed. Thank you so much.
Well, short of training to become an astronaut, I've opted for the next best thing, the Space Museum here in Toulouse, and I'm joined by the museum's CEO, Jean-Baptiste Desbois. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
It's my pleasure.
So this is basically a module, is it, from the ISS?
This is quite a realistic model of the Columbus part, which is the European lab of the ISS.
To help us understand what it's like to be an astronaut a little bit better, you've got a special exhibition here at the Space Museum. Could you show me around?
Yes, okay, go on.
You lead the way. What do astronauts even eat?
They have to eat some freeze-dried food because all things inside the ISS floats. So you have to have this kind of food, and they add water inside to eat.
And just over here is something that I think will answer the question a lot of people have, which is how do you go to the lavatory in outer space? This is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the answer. This is a vacuum system.
So not very comfortable, but it does the job.
It does the job, hopefully.
Okay. And what happens if an astronaut falls ill during their mission? What can they do?
When there are some problems, they have medical kits, first of all, with a lot of things. They can do some microsurgery, for example.
Has the technology changed much, do you think, over the last 3-4 decades?
Not a lot, but some things I think have changed. For example, the astronauts can now more communicate, and it's very important on a psychological point of view. They can discuss with their families. Second point, I think the launches now and the International Space Station is more secure. It's less dangerous than before. When you go, you can come back. When Yuri Gagarin was the first man launched to space, he was not sure to come back. It's incredible nowadays.
Well, that's all we have time for this week's edition of France in Focus. We're going to leave you here on the moon, well, sort of, in a place that resembles lunar gravity and simulates what it feels like. Thanks for watching, and see you back on planet Earth again very soon. Boing, boing, boing. Ready? Well,